In Peru, electoral authorities have finally concluded processing 100% of the ballots cast in Sunday's presidential election, with leftist Pedro Castillo maintaining his lead over far-right candidate Keiko Fujimori. Amid activist protests, the leaders of the 7 leading capitalist economies began their summit in England for their first in-person talks in nearly 2 years. Africa is heading into a third wave of coronavirus infections as the least inoculated continent faces a shortage of vaccines. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. In Peru, electoral authorities have finally concluded processing 100% of the ballots cast in Sunday's presidential election, with leftist Pedro Castillo maintaining his lead over far-right candidate Keiko Fujimori. Less than a percentage point of the ballots process remain to be counted. Castillo currently has an advantage of over 60,000 votes over Fujimori in what has been one of the closest presidential races in the country's history. Meanwhile, Fujimori is attempting to have 200,000 votes annulled, alleging fraud with no proof whatsoever. All international observer missions have denied any significant irregularities witnessed in the process. Pedro Castillo addressed his supporters who gathered in the capital Lima regarding the electoral results that they keep him leading the presidential contest.
And with that dignity, I address you today and the Peruvian people. I bring here today the firmness which you have wrought for. These people thirsty for justice has made, brothers Peruvian people, dear brothers who are outside this country, who took a border and crossed the desert to seek better opportunities because they didn't have a homeland to shelter them, and today we have this homeland not only to recover it, but this homeland that is for all Peruvians.
Likewise, Pedro Castillo sent a greeting to the Latin American leaders and social movements who have sent their congratulations on the count that keeps him leader of the elections.
The greeting that we have received today from living organizations of all countries, from the teachers of all countries of Latin America, of the defense fronts, from the popular organizations of neighboring countries, from the President of Bolivia, a greeting for all the people of Bolivia, President Fernandez of Argentina, President of Nicaragua, a greeting with deep Latin American fervors for each and every one of you. And I would like to greet the political leaders who today have given their time to come and recognize and say how well the people have awakened.
El presidente de Nicaragua, un saludo.
Argentina's President Alberto Fernandez has officially recognized Pedro Castillo as the president-elect of Peru. In a tweet, he noted that he had communicated with Castillo, to whom he expressed his desire to join efforts and work in favor of Latin America, noting that Argentina and Peru are deeply twinned nations. He also congratulated the Peruvian people for the democratic exercise. Bolivian President Luis Arce also took to Twitter to congratulate leftist candidate Pedro Castillo on winning the presidential elections in Peru. In his tweet, President Arce said Bolivia joins the celebration of the Peruvian people and congratulates brother Pedro Castillo, president-elect of Peru, a country with which we share history and culture. The Patria Grande, the great homeland, joins forces to continue the fight for a tomorrow with justice and equality for the people. And now we move on. Colombia's national strike continues unabated, entering its 45th day, braving the most brutal repression by police forces. The latest fatal victim is John Arenas from the southwestern city of Cali. He was driving his car when shots from a police high-caliber gun hit him, the alternative media outlet Colombia Informa said. Demonstrations will continue this Friday. Students of the State National University in Bogotá will march towards the prosecutor's office, where they will be joined by art performers. They demand a clear condemnation of state terror by the Inter-American Human Rights Commission, following a fact-finding mission that ended on Thursday. Human rights groups said at least 70 murders and 3,700 cases of excessive violence by security forces have been recorded. As the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights was hearing testimonies and collecting information about the victims of police abuses, not too far from there in the Chicala neighborhood, the riot squadron threw tear gas canisters inside houses. A 6-year-old boy was severely affected. Nicaraguan institutions are getting ready for the upcoming elections. Among them, the recently reduced Supreme Electoral Council, which reiterated its commitment to fulfill its role to ensure the progress of this process, scheduled for November of this year. More details with our correspondent, Maria Jose Diaz.
The laws on foreign agents and for the defense of the rights of the people were approved by the National Assembly, with which the legislative body seeks to strengthen national sovereignty in the face of attempts of foreign interference.
The fact that a person is promoting or encouraging the interference of countries, powers, or foreign or international organizations in our internal affairs is a crime, and it's up to the Nicaraguan people to act and respond.
Opposition sectors stated their rejection. However, according to analysts, this institution is complying with the provisions of the law.
The Council has not restricted anyone at all for being candidates, for being that, for wanting to opt, in this case, for the presidents or vice presidents of the Republic. The legislation is applied due to other incidents, and this individual must be brought to justice. I think we must understand it in this way because that is how it is, because they want to put this country on its knees, and that is unacceptable. In this country there cannot be another 2018.
In the midst of this scenario, Nicaraguans are getting ready for the next electoral process. This is the case of Don Antonio, who lives on the Bolivar a Chavez Avenue, one of the busiest capital. He follows the news and even more so in an election year.
Here, everybody has to listen, to be attentive to the truth. And here, we are heading for elections. If the opposition does not stand a candidate that is clean here in Nicaragua, they won't be able to run. A person that was born and raised here, and secondly, that fulfills the requirements of the Supreme Electoral Council.
By constitutional mandate, the Supreme Electoral Council in Nicaragua is responsible for calling, organizing and managing the general elections of November 7, 2021, where the President, Vice President, 92 members of the National Assembly, and 20 lawmakers of the Central American Parliament will be elected.
Maria Jose Diaz, TeleSUR, Nicaragua.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. This Friday, the leaders of the 7 leading capitalist economies began their summit in England for their first in-person talks in nearly 2 years. They were greeted by protests. The meeting is expected to begin with a pledge to donate 1 billion COVID-19 vaccine doses to the world's poorest countries. This will ensure headlines, but the core of the matter is whether they will agree on releasing vaccines' intellectual property rights so that jobs are massively manufactured at low cost in developing countries. G7 pharmaceutical concerns oppose this. They will also discuss climate change. Studies said the 7 are poised to see their economies shrink dramatically due to not only the pandemic, but above all by greenhouse gas emissions produced by unleashed overexploitation of natural resources. The G7 boss, U.S. President Joe Biden, is expected to hold crucial meetings during its week-long European tour, among them an encounter with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, in Switzerland. The issue on vaccine patents moved the London-based charity organization Oxfam to stage a protest. The giant syringe greeted leaders on arrival, representing the urgent need for massive production of jabs around the world.
I think it's really important to understand that every single successful vaccine was funded by public money. Billions of subsidy from the taxpayers of the US and Europe funded these vaccines. These are our vaccines. They do not belong to pharmaceutical firms. This is not their own private investment. And we're also not saying they shouldn't make a profit. We're just saying they shouldn't make monopoly profits, excessive profits. We've created 9 new vaccine billionaires in the last 6 months. So it's not about not making money, it's about not making excessive money and allowing the market to develop and have other manufacturers all over the world make these vaccines and save lives.
And outside the summit's venue in Cardiff Bay, England, both Biden and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson became characters in a protest led by the group Extinction Rebellion. These people represented billions in demanding the heads of the world's top capitalist economies to undertake real action in reducing greenhouse effects and climate change. China said on Friday its newly passed anti-foreign sanctions law will provide a predictable legal environment for foreign companies in China.
As for the effect of anti-foreign sanctions laws on foreign investment, I do not see a definite connection between the two. If anything, the enactment of the anti-foreign sanctions law provides a predictable legal environment and a stable and predictable business environment for foreign companies operating in China. The current anti-foreign sanctions law fully takes into account the views of all parties, reflects the common will of the Chinese people, and conforms to international law and basic norms governing international relations.
A Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson also slammed Amnesty International's report on China's repression of Xinjiang Muslims minority as another line in its many chapters of lies. Following a sustained media campaign on the issue, the Amnesty International report claims that massive numbers of people have been subjected to brainwashing, torture and other degrading treatment in internment camps, while millions more live in fear.
Everyone knows what kind of organization Amnesty International is. This organization has always been biased, is sowing discord everywhere with its tales, spreading lies and rumors about Xinjiang. Its so-called report is just another line in its many chapters of lies. We urge this organization to abandon its inherent prejudice against China, stop creating and spreading false information, and view relevant issues in an objective and impartial way.
And Cuba announced the suspension of the acceptance of US dollars in cash in its banking institutions as of June 21st. The Director General for the United States at the Cuban Ministry of Foreign Affairs explains the reasons for the measure.
Avoidable and indispensable measure that our banking and financial system has to take. There is no way to avoid taking it, and it is a measure that is also motivated by the United States economic blockade. Our people know, and the international community also knows, that the purpose of the blockade is to cause damage to the Cuban economy. It is to asphyxiate the Cuban economy, and to that end it seeks to sink the income of the population, to plunge the standard of living of the population, as was once written in an official State Department document, to sink income, to generate hunger, to cause misery, and to try to create a situation of instability among the Cuban population.
In Argentina, the lower house passed 2 bills to guarantee the inclusion of transvestite, transsexual and transgender people in the workplace and media. The draft must be now approved by the Senate. The bill, approved by an overwhelming majority of 207 against 11, imposes quotas on hiring trans people in state-controlled enterprises and public offices. Private businesses must also develop inclusive personnel strategies. It also provides for greater access to funding by entrepreneurs. The new law follows up of a decree issued last year by President Alberto Fernandez. The House also passed a second bill establishing gender parity from a sexual diversity perspective in the national state media. Panamanian maritime authorities are cleaning up an oil spill in Taboga Beach, a tiny wildlife-rich island in the Panama Bay. As usual, nobody knows who spilled the contaminating oil. As usual, too, the Pollution Prevention and Control Department of the Maritime Authority in Panama reported that investigations on the incident have begun. Several samples of the product have been taken to be analyzed and compared with the boats that are anchored in the area in order to find those responsible and fine them for this environmental pollution, the agency said. The official also said that once they became aware of the situation, they activated a contingency plan to provide immediate response.
We do not know exactly where it comes from. We assume that it is from one of the boats that was outside the Urabá island, where the lighthouse is. And well, unfortunately, it was a considerable amount because with the rising sea, we realized that it was quite a lot, and it was dispersed on the main beaches of the island.
These spills have been happening. It is not the first one. We as residents, myself as a merchant, feel very affected because this is a tourist island and obviously the oil industry does not get along well with tourism.
And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back from the south. Africa is heading into a third wave of virus infections as the least inoculated continent faces a shortage of vaccines. In an online briefing, the director of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said that African nations reported 94,000 new cases in the week, in a 26% increase. And the executive also warned that the strain identified in India is spreading rapidly in at least 13 of the 55 member states of the African Union. South Africa reported the highest figures, followed by Tunisia. World Health Organization reaffirmed that if the continent does not receive the necessary vaccines, only 7 of Africa's sovereign nations will achieve the goal of vaccinating 10% of their population by September. And the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said on Thursday that a higher than expected number of young men have experienced heart inflammation after their second dose of COVID-19 vaccine shots from Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna. The agency said it's still assessing the risk from the condition and has not yet concluded that there was a causal relationship between the vaccines and cases of myocarditis or pericarditis. There were 283 observed cases of heart inflammation after the second vaccine dose in those aged 16 to 24 in the vaccine's adverse event reported system data. On Thursday, President Joe Biden promised the United States will donate 500 million doses to help speed the pandemic's end and called on other leaders to join him in sharing coronavirus vaccines with struggling nations around the world. But that's not the whole story. Biden forgot to mention that this humanitarian gesture excludes almost 30 million Venezuelans and the citizens of other countries Washington considers to be foes and puts them under siege. Speaking in England before the summit meeting of the Group of Seven, Biden announced the U.S. commitment to vaccine sharing. The U.S. will buy and donate 500 million Pfizer doses for distribution through the global COVAX mechanism alliance to 92 lower-income countries and the African Union, except those under the so-called sanctions. Venezuela denounced that some $10 million transferred to the COVAX system for vaccine purchases were blocked due to the U.S. restrictions. And the majority of Brazil's Supreme Federal Court judges voted this Thursday in favor of holding the Copa America football tournament in the country, scheduled to begin on Sunday. This despite the ongoing serious COVID-19 epidemic. 2 lawsuits have been filed requesting the suspension of the regional sporting event due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The tournament was to be held in Colombia and Argentina, but was cancelled in the first due to the major social unrest, and in the second due to the surge in COVID-19 cases. The Syrian government warned the United Nations on the dangerous Israeli expansionist and war policies. In a letter, the Syrian Foreign Ministry stated that Israel is a dishonest entity and poses a threat to regional peace and security no less than the Daesh, also known as ISIS state, the terrorist group that failed in dismembering Syria to become a failed state. The ongoing terrorist acts performed by Israel against Syria and other countries in the region, which have intensified especially in the occupied Palestinian territories, would have been impossible without the support and protection of the United States and its Western allies, the Syrian letter says. On Friday, a speeding bus in southwestern Pakistan overturned on a highway, killing 19 people and injuring at least 50 others. Local police reported that the driver lost control on a sharp turn and the bus upended in Buzar, a district in the Balochistan province. Rescuers transported the wounded to a hospital as they were in critical condition. Officials stated the driver negligence apparently caused the accident, but investigations were still underway. Friday's accident came just a few days after 2 express trains collided in southern Pakistan, killing at least 63 people and injuring dozens. Deadly accidents caused by poor road infrastructure, disregard for traffic laws, and poorly maintained vehicles are common in Pakistan. And French President Emmanuel Macron said on Thursday France's operation fighting armed groups in the Sahel region of northwest Africa will come to an end, with troops now operating as part of a broader Western country's intervention in the former colonies. France has always been in the habit of stationing troops in its former colonies to protect its economic interest. This time, the fight is against Sahel Islamic groups linked to Al-Qaeda. Macron says some progress had been made, but the situation is extremely fragile. Paris has grown frustrated with no apparent end in sight to this operation and political turmoil, especially in Mali, where France exploits gold mines. Macron said details of the changes will be finalized by the end of June after consultations with the United States, European states involved in the region, and then 5 Sahel countries: Mali, Niger, Chad, Burkina Faso, and Mauritania.
We will initiate a profound transformation of our military presence in the Sahel, the modalities and timetable of which will be specified in the coming weeks, and I will do so by the end of June. But I will initiate this work in the coming days. This transformation will result in a change of model. It will involve the transformation to a new framework. That is to say, the end of Operation Barkhane as an external operation to allow for an operation of support and cooperation to the armies of the country and of the region that wish to do so, and the implementation of a military operation and international alliance associating the state of
when Rwanda and Uganda split, had a falling out, that was then